3 months after the incident at 42 Willow Lane, I still can't look at a pizza box without shaking. The doctors say I'm suffering from PTSD. They prescribe medications, recommend therapy, tell me to move on. But how do you move on when you've seen what I've seen? When you've delivered to what I've delivered to? I was working for Tony's Pizza, a local joint in suburban Connecticut. Nothing special, just your typical family-owned place, trying to compete with the big chains. I've been delivering for them for about 6 months, saving up for college. The pay was decent, especially on Friday nights when the tips were good. The order came in at 10:47 p.m., 13 minutes before closing. I remember the time exactly because I'd been watching the clock, hoping to get out early. The address was 42 Willow Lane, a street I'd never delivered to before, which was weird because I thought I knew every street in our delivery radius. "Last one of the night, Jake," Tony said, sliding the pizza box across the counter. "Large pepperoni, extra sauce." He hesitated, then added, "Be careful out there." Weird stuff happening lately. I should have asked what he meant. Should have noticed how his hands trembled slightly, how he wouldn't quite meet my eyes. But I was 19, invincible, and thinking about the party I was missing. The GPS couldn't find Willow Lane. I had to use an actual paper map from the glove compartment, following the faded lines until I found it. A small street tucked away behind the Old Mill District. The street wasn't just off the beaten path. It felt deliberately hidden. The houses on Willow Lane were different from the rest of town. Older, Victorian-style places with steep roofs and too many windows. They all looked abandoned but perfectly maintained, like movie sets waiting for their actors. 42 was at the end of the street. Unlike its neighbors, lights blazed from every window. The front door was painted a deep red that reminded me of something I couldn't quite place. The porch light flickered as I approached, casting strange shadows that seemed to move independently of anything that could be casting them. I pressed the doorbell. Instead of the expected chime, I heard what sounded like children laughing. Distant, distorted, wrong somehow. The door opened before the sound faded. The woman who answered was beautiful in a way that made my eyes hurt. Her features were perfect, but they didn't seem to fit together quite right, like a puzzle assembled by someone who only had a vague idea of what a human face should look like. "Pizza delivery?" I said, trying to ignore how the porch light made her cast 3 shadows, each pointing in a different direction. "Yes," she smiled, showing too many teeth. "We've been waiting. Please, bring it in." Every delivery training video, every horror movie, every instinct screamed not to enter. But my feet moved forward anyway. The pizza box felt hot in my hands, much hotter than it should have been after the drive. The interior of the house defied physics. The entry hall stretched far longer than the house's exterior should have allowed. Family photos lined the walls, but the faces in them were blurred, like they were moving when the pictures were taken. All of them. "The dining room is just ahead," the woman said, though I hadn't heard her follow me in. Her voice seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. "They're all so hungry." The dining room was vast, with a table that extended into shadows my eyes couldn't penetrate. Seated around it were people. At least they had the general shape of people. But like the woman, everything about them was slightly wrong. Their proportions were off, their movements too fluid or too jerky, their faces familiar in a way that made me feel sick. "Set it here," the woman said, indicating the center of the table. As I placed the box down, I noticed the table's surface was covered in rings, like those left by hot pizza boxes. Hundreds of them, overlapping. Some fresh, some so old they were carved deep into the wood. "How much?" the woman asked, reaching into a purse that hadn't been there a moment before. $15.95, I managed to say. She handed me a 20. The bill was warm and slightly damp. "Keep the change," she said. We always tip well, don't we, dear? One of the figures at the table nodded, its head moving too far to one side. Very well, it said in a voice that sounded like several people trying to speak in unison. We have to. It's so hard to find delivery people willing to come back. That's when I noticed the walls. What I'd thought was flowered wallpaper was actually hundreds of delivery receipts. Pizza Hut, Domino's, local places I'd never heard of. Some were dated recently, others were yellow with age. A few appeared to be written on parchment, in languages I didn't recognize. You should join us, the woman said. Her face was different now, still beautiful, but in a new way, like she was trying on different versions of herself. We always invite the delivery person to join us. It's only polite. The figures at the table began to move, making space between them. The gaps they created seemed to go on forever, like holes cut in reality. I should get back, I stammered. More deliveries. Oh, but we insist. Her smile widened literally, stretching beyond the confines of her face. We so rarely have new guests. The others, well, they've begun to grow stale. That's when I saw them. Behind the seated figures, standing in the shadows, other delivery people. Dozens of them still holding their pizza boxes, wearing uniforms from different restaurants. Some looked fresh, like they'd just arrived. Others were faded, barely visible, like old photographs left in the sun. A few were little more than outlines, their edges blurring into the darkness. They were all smiling, all staring, all waiting. The woman's hand touched my shoulder. Her fingers were too long, too cold, and there were too many of them. Stay, she said, just for one slice. I heard the pizza box open behind me. The smell that wafted out wasn't pepperoni. It wasn't food at all. It was age and endings, and things that should stay buried. We ordered extra sauce, one of the figures said. Its voice sounded like wind through a graveyard. We always order extra sauce. I turned to look at the pizza. The top was covered in something red, something that moved and pulsed and tried to form shapes I couldn't quite comprehend. The pepperoni weren't pepperoni at all, but something else. Something that blinked and watched and hungered. Just one bite, the woman whispered, her breath cold against my ear. Just one taste. Then you'll understand. Then you'll be ready to deliver for us forever. The other delivery people began to move forward, their movements jerky like marionettes. Their uniforms began to blur together, becoming one continuous stream of logos and names and times of disappearance. I ran. The hallway stretched impossibly before me, the exit getting further away with each step. The photos on the walls turned to watch me pass, their blurred faces becoming clearer, showing expressions no human face should be capable of making. Behind me, I heard the woman sigh. They always run, she said, but they always come back. They have to. We keep ordering. The laughter started again. That horrible, distorted child's laughter from the doorbell. But now I could hear words in it, promises and threats and truths I didn't want to know. I reached the front door just as something cold brushed the back of my neck. Something with too many fingers and too many intentions. The red door swung open at my touch, and I burst out into the night. I didn't stop running until I reached my car. The key was in the ignition, the engine running, though I knew I'd turned it off. As I sped away, I glanced in the rearview mirror. Number 42 was dark now, like all the other houses on the street. But in every window, I could see faces. Delivery people from every restaurant, every time period, every reality where pizza could be ordered and brought to that horrible door. They were all waving goodbye. Or maybe they were waving, see you soon. When I got back to Tony's, the place was locked up. Dark. The sign said it had been closed for renovations for the past 3 months. But that was impossible. I'd been working there just that night. Hadn't I? My phone buzzed, a text from a number that was just an endless series of zeros. Thank you for delivering to 42 Willow Lane. Your tip has been processed. We've added you to our preferred delivery list. See you again soon. P.S. We'll keep ordering until you get it right. That was 3 months ago. Since then, every place I've tried to work, every pizza place I've even walked past, gets an order. Always at 10:47 p.m. Always for 42 Willow Lane. I've changed my phone number 6 times. Changed cities twice. But the texts keep coming. The orders keep coming. And sometimes, late at night, I smell pizza. Not normal pizza. The pizza from that house. And I feel fingers, too many fingers, brushing the back of my neck. I know eventually I'll have to deliver there again. They know it too. After all, they always tip well. And they always order extra sauce. I thought I was the only one. Thought I was going crazy. Then I found the message boards. Other delivery drivers, all sharing similar stories about different houses, different addresses, but always the same. Family. We started connecting the dots, sharing information, building a database of addresses to avoid, times when the orders typically came in, names that appeared on the receipts. Patterns emerged. It's not just one house. They're everywhere. 42 Willow Lane, 24 Sycamore Street, 15 Blackwood Avenue, different streets, different towns, different countries even. But always the same numbers rearranged. Always the same family waiting inside. And they're getting bolder. Last week, I got a call from another driver named Mike. He delivered to a house in Oregon that matched the pattern. He'd run, just like I had. But he'd managed to take something with him. One of the receipts from the wall. You need to see this, he told me. The dates, they go back further than they should. Way further. The oldest receipt he could make out was from 1842. The delivery charge was listed in shillings. The restaurant name was written in a language that linguists say hasn't been spoken in over 1,000 years. That's when we realized what we were dealing with. They weren't just ordering pizza. They were ordering time. Slices of reality, delivered hot and fresh to whatever door they were currently calling home. I agreed to meet Mike at a diner just off I-95. He never showed. Instead, I got a text from his phone. Sorry I couldn't make it. Got called in for a last-minute delivery to 42 Willow Lane. A funny coincidence, right? They ordered extra sauce again. The timestamp on the text was 10:47 p.m. I tried calling him back. The number was disconnected. When I looked up his delivery service, they had no record of ever employing a Mike. But they did have an opening for a driver if I was interested. That's how they spread, we realized. Every time they take a driver, they create a job opening. Every job opening leads to a new delivery. Every delivery leads to their door. I started researching the history of pizza delivery, trying to find the first instance, the origin point. But the deeper I dug, the stranger things got. The first recorded pizza delivery should have been in 1889 to Queen Margherita of Italy. But I found earlier references. Medieval manuscripts describing circular bread-bearing toppings delivered under cover of night to doors that should not be. Ancient Roman texts warning about meals that travel by moonlight to houses that hunger. They've always been here, always ordering, always waiting behind their red doors with too many shadows. Last night, I broke into the county records office, looked up the property records for 42 Willow Lane. The street shouldn't exist. It's not on any modern maps, but I found the records. The first owner was listed as The Family, no other names. The sale price was listed as Continued Service. The date of purchase was tomorrow. While I was reading this, my phone buzzed. A new text. Thank you for researching our history. Your curiosity has been noted. We're having a family reunion soon. We'll need a large order, many toppings, extra sauce. You'll deliver it, of course, EPS. Did you really think Mike found that receipt by accident? We let him take it, just like we let you find these records. Everything delivers according to plan. I ran out of the records office, but the street looked different. All the buildings had red doors now. All had porch lights that cast multiple shadows. And from every door came the sound of children laughing, of phones ringing with orders, of delivery drivers knocking with pizzas that hadn't been invented yet. I made it home, but home wasn't home anymore. The walls were covered in receipts, the air smelled like their pizza, and my delivery uniform was laid out on the bed, pressed and clean, ready for work. My phone hasn't stopped buzzing since. Orders keep coming in. Addresses that shouldn't exist, from customers who shouldn't be possible, for pizzas that shouldn't be made. But here's the real horror, the thing that keeps me awake at night. I'm starting to get hungry. Hungry for their pizza, for their sauce, for whatever reality they're serving up, slice by slice. I find myself checking delivery job listings. My hands shake when I see a pizza box. Sometimes when I look in the mirror, I see someone in a delivery uniform standing behind me, smiling with too many teeth, holding a pizza box that pulses with a heat that has nothing to do with cooking. The worst part, I'm beginning to understand why they do it, why they keep ordering. They're not just hungry for pizza, they're hungry for deliveries themselves, for the act of ordering, of waiting, of opening the door to find someone holding a box of hot, fresh possibilities. They're hungry for the moment when the delivery person realizes what's happening, when they understand that they're not just delivering pizza, they're delivering themselves, their time, their reality, their place in the endless chain of orders and deliveries and tips that never quite add up. Last night, I caught myself reaching for the phone, found myself dialing a number I didn't know I knew, started to place an order. I hung up before I finished, but not before I heard the voice on the other end, my voice from some other delivery, some other time saying, "Thank you for calling. Will this be for delivery?" So I'm writing this warning, posting it everywhere I can, telling every delivery driver I meet, stay away from addresses that feel wrong. Don't deliver to houses with red doors and too many shadows. And never, ever accept their tips. Because once you do, you're part of their service, part of their family, part of their endless hunger for deliveries that bring more than just pizza to their impossible doors. I have to go now. My phone is ringing. The caller ID shows all zeros, and it's 10:47 p.m. They're ordering again. And this time I think I'm going to accept the delivery. After all, they always tip well. And I'm getting so hungry. A note found paperclip to this document. If you're reading this, it's too late. You've read about them. They know you know. Soon, your phone will ring. You'll get a delivery job offer. You'll accept it because you have to. Because that's how it works. Because that's how it's always worked. Welcome to the service industry. Welcome to the family. Don't forget to check the receipt. They always tip well. And they always, always order extra sauce.